I'm sorry, the Devils should sacrifice who for Jacob Markstrom? And Patrik Laine wants out of Columbus. Potential option for Tom Fitzgerald? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, College Hockey Play-by-Play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. It's a silly season discussion. Patrik Laine wants out of Columbus. I've been saying on this show the last few weeks that the Devils are in need of some more offensive depth to replace the production of Michael McLeod and Miles Wood, so that way they're not so top-heavy. Is Patrik Laine a player that I have in mind? That's going to be the focus in segment 2 and 3. But to kick off today's show, let's discuss something that I've been talking heavily about the last couple days, and that is Jacob Markstrom, because we have a new discussion point, and it goes beyond silly season. At this point, we're talking about hysterical season. Steve Kouleas was on NHL Network, and he was throwing out some ideas that the Devils could offer the Calgary Flames in order to get the services of Jacob Markstrom. As we all know, the Devils are one of the front-running teams to land Markstrom alongside with the Ottawa Senators and Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Flames have named their price. It seems like that they're demanding a first-round pick and also a high-end prospect. I'll talk more about that in a few moments, but here's what Kouleas threw out. He said Dawson Mercer, Shimon Nemec, or a bunch of high-round draft picks. All right, I saw this clip make its way around X, and I was looking for a high-definition version of it because I didn't just want to play a clip of somebody recording the discussion on their TV. The volume wasn't really all that good. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it, but I will leave a link to the original tweet in the description. Here's my reaction to it. No, and no. I've said it the past few episodes, but I don't think the Devils necessarily need to break the bank in order to get Markstrom. That is why I think Tom Fitzgerald is focusing more on Markstrom and less on players like John Gibson, Linus Ullmark, UC Soros, and even Elvis Merzlikins. I think Markstrom has the best chance of landing in New Jersey because he has waived his no movement clause for New Jersey for the time being. And I think it's not a matter of if, it's more of a matter of when will Markstrom find his way out of Calgary. Will he end up with the Devils? I'm not a fortune teller, but it seems like all signs are pointing that the Devils are indeed the front runners to land him, as alluded to by James Nichols in one of his more recent articles. Dawson Mercer, Shimon Nemec, high-end draft picks? No. Okay, first and foremost, Dawson Mercer is a pending RFA. And I have no doubt in the back of my mind that he is going to end up in New Jersey this upcoming season. I think Tom Fitzgerald is going to hammer out an extension. For how long and for how much, I am projecting anywhere from 2 to 3 years, just so Mercer has some more time to redeem himself. That way, his pay can go up just a little bit more. He might just bet on himself, but I've already discussed that in a prior episode. Nemec, I don't know why you would include him in any trade packages, especially for a goalie. That doesn't make sense either. Similar to Luke Hughes, his ceiling is rather high, and honestly, I think he performed quite well for what his role was projected to be. Going into the season, he started off with the Utica Comets, but then the Devils were dealing with some injuries, and Nemec had to be brought up into an uncomfortable position, and he suited up in most of the games, and he showed some offensive flashes. I think Nemec, similar to Luke Hughes, just has a lot of potential. And I said it in yesterday's episode that unless you're offered a big-time trade package for like a multi-time All-Star, You do not include him in any trade packages. I think you will regret that. And for a bunch of draft picks, that could be discussed, but I don't think that's the likely avenue. All right. The Devils, in terms of getting Jacob Markstrom, I don't even think they need to sacrifice Alexander Holtz, if I'm being completely honest, because the Flames are at Markstrom's mercy. Markstrom wants to get out of there, and he has a no movement clause. So you can't just pick and choose which team you're going to send him off to. He has a say in this. He has the power in this sort of aspect. And I know the Flames are demanding for a first-round draft pick and also a high-end prospect. But just because you're asking for that price, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. For example, here's some duct tape in my hands. If I say I want to sell this for $10, maybe my highest bidder will be like $5, and I have no choice but to give it up. I don't see the Flames holding on to Markstrom, because the longer you hold on to him, the more his value goes down. If the Flames would have traded him early on in the season, I think they could have gotten a lot more. But now, since that contract is getting smaller, and Markstrom is getting older and older, that value goes down. And trades are an investment. And if the Devils include any young guns in this sort of deal, they might end up regretting it. Albeit, I'm willing to part ways with a prospect here or there, but which one? I'm not comfortable giving up Seamus Casey or Lenny Haminaho, but I know this is a business, and Tom Fitzgerald obviously knows it better than I do. But going back to what Kouleas said, that's just a ridiculous set of offers. That surely is not a good investment. Once again, my bottom offer for Jacob Markstrom is the third-round draft pick and a prospect. How many? That could be negotiated. Let's look at future draft picks for Devils. I don't think they're going to give up that 10th overall pick for Jacob Markstrom. I think the Devils have learned their lesson from the Corey Schneider fiasco over 10 years ago. The Devils have a first-round draft pick next year and also in 2026. Do you include that? They have 2 second-round picks next year. Can you include that? For the time being, for this draft, they have 2 third-round picks, 2 fifth-round picks, and 1 sixth-round pick outside of the 10th overall selection. I think something can be negotiated. Honestly, I don't think Markstrom is worth a first-round pick for the time being. I think the Devils can definitely offer a few lower-end draft picks and a few prospects to pry him away from Calgary. For the final time, I don't expect the Devils to break the bank for Jacob Markstrom, which is why I think Tom Fitzgerald has his focus on him in the first place. I honestly spat out my drink when I saw that clip. It was so controversial. It was completely out of touch as to what the Devils need or want, because if you sacrifice one of your defensemen, whether they're offensive-minded or put more of an emphasis on defense, then you're making yourself worse. If you give up Nemec in this sort of aspect, yes, he focuses more on offense, but you're losing more defensive pieces. And as a result, it doesn't matter if you get a good goalie, it'll just cancel each other out. You need to add more defensive depth, and yes, you do need to add a goalie, but you can't sacrifice pieces like that and expect a quick fix. This is a process, and if the Devils gave up on the Mets this early, that process is just going to slow down a little bit more, in my opinion. It's not pick one or the other. The Devils need to improve their goaltending, and they need to improve their defense. And it starts with keeping the defensive assets they have in store right now and adding more to it. Add more inventory. And for Dawson Mercer, that makes no sense either. Dawson Mercer has a lot of untapped potential, and he can give 10-plus years of good service. And Markstrom, how many more years of service can he give the Devils? This season, next season, then how much longer can he go, if we're being completely honest? That's my thing. I don't agree at all. Let me know what you guys think. What are you willing to give up for Jacob Markstrom? Before we continue, let me tell you guys about the GameTime app. GameTime makes getting NBA Final tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and the same can be said for the Stanley Cup Final. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select games ahead of the game or event. Save even more when you choose a section and let GameTime choose the seats. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a great view of your seat in the app before you buy, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference because they have the lowest price guaranteed. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry thanks to GameTime ticket coverage. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, let's move on from one silly season discussion to the other. Let's focus on Patrik Laine of the Columbus Blue Jackets in the same division as the Devils. According to Pierre LeBrun, Patrik Laine, quote-unquote, wants a fresh start and both sides are working on a trade. All right, that is interesting, and that is something the Devils should keep their eye out, and I will explain momentarily. But first and foremost, I want to applaud Patrik Laine. As we all know, he checked himself into the player's assistant program, and he took some time away from the game. And as we all know, some things are just bigger than sports. Some things are just bigger than hockey. And first and foremost, your mental health is a priority. And kudos to Patrik Laine for realizing that, taking some time away from the game. And he says, I want to continue, but I want a fresh start. And I think no Blue Jackets fans will hold that against him. Sometimes you do need a fresh start to just reset. I've been in that situation before too. And I really hope that wherever he lands, he just becomes happier and he just grows as a person. That's all I got to say. At the end of the day, it's sports, not life. When looking at Patrik Laine, he originally signed a 4-year, $34.8 million contract. He has this season and then next season, and then he will become a UFA. And he has an $8.7 million cap hit. And when analyzing his stats, similar to what I just said, it's a little difficult to break it down just because he did take some time off from the game. This season, he appeared in 18 games. He had 6 goals, 3 assists for a grand total of 9 points. Not really much to gauge from that sort of aspect, but luckily, Alex Chavancy, former writer over at the Hockey Writers and current host of New Jersey Devils on the Rush podcast, he put out on social media, and he said, I'd at least inquire if I were the Devils. And I do agree with what Alex Chavancy said. Now, before we dissect more of what Chavancy put out on social media, looking back at Laine's performance last season, he had an injury-plagued season during the 2022-2023 campaign. He appeared in 55 games. He had 22 goals, 30 assists for a grand total of 52 points. And a few years ago, during the 2017-2018 season, he actually led the league in power play goals with 20. What does Patrik Laine add to the roster? I would say he's a pretty decent scorer, and similar to what I said in segment 1, the Devils do need some more depth assets in terms of their bottom 6, because it seemed like as the season went on, especially when the Devils were dealing with a decent amount of injuries, they were very top heavy, and maybe Patrik Laine can ease the burn in that sort of way. And somebody responded to Chavancy on Twitter when he put out saying that the Devils should inquire about him. He said that Laine is not bad. He'll never be great off the puck, but he's improved there. And I think the big thing for Laine is that he is a great finisher. He's good on the man advantage, and he does add some extra offense. And I think that's what you can expect from someone like Patrik Laine. Courtesy of HockeyRumors.com, I found some more information about Laine and what people can expect from him. They said Laine has been an interesting player, to say the least, during his time in Columbus, since being acquired by the organization in a trade during the 2021 NHL season. In 174 games for the Blue Jackets, Laine has scored 64 goals and 138 points as the team hoped he would be a solid complement to Johnny Gaudreau on the first line. This past season was far and away Laine's worst in Ohio, as he only managed 6 goals and 9 points in 18 games. And it wasn't really going all that well. And in mid-November, he was a healthy scratch for the first time in his career. And then a couple months later, he decided to take a break from the game. And I think the relationship in Columbus, it's run its course. And like I've been saying, I think it's time for Laine to get a fresh change of scenery. Now, before I give my final verdict on the trade, I want to tell you guys about Policygenius. Policygenius helps you compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can walk you through the process step by step. Your work-life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description for your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Okay, final verdict. Should the Devils pursue Patrik Laine? Like I've been saying, the Devils do need some more depth assets, and they need to replace the production of Michael McLeod and Miles Wood in some sort of aspect, as they were very top-heavy as the season progressed, and you could see that the Devils were struggling to get decent scoring outside of their key contributors, including Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Timo Meier. And that was one of the reasons why the Devils had such a historic season during the 2022-2023 campaign, is just because they had all sorts of depth assets that contributed in more ways than one. I don't think Patrik Laine is necessarily the player I had in mind, but considering the circumstances, considering the fact that he does want out of Columbus, and I don't know if many suitors are going to want him. The article that I just read, you guys, they said that the Anaheim Ducks or the San Jose Sharks, they could come into factor. Patrik Laine, if he can repeat what he did during the 2022-2023 season, like I said in the second segment, then that's actually a solid contributor for the Devils. The problem is like his defense is not really all that good. Don't expect him to replace Wood or McLeod in that sort of aspect, but he was a pretty good complementary piece on the Johnny Gaudreau line, if I'm being honest. For what it's worth, the Blue Jackets, they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be in their rebuild. They're not going to dominate the Metropolitan Division, and I say that with all due respect. The Devils missed the playoffs just this past season, but if I'm being honest, I don't think the Blue Jackets are going to demand for much. Once again, not exactly what I had in mind, but maybe you can just see what the offer would be like. And if I had to throw out something for the Blue Jackets, here's what I would offer. I would say, first and foremost, you have to retain at least half of his salary, because he has this season and next season remaining, and he has a cap hit of $8.7 million. If the Blue Jackets don't retain half of that salary, that trade is dead, in my opinion. And that's a no-go for Tom Fitzgerald. But if they do retain half of his salary, okay, now you can move a step further. In terms of assets, I talked about it in the first segment, the Devils do have some draft picks to offer. You could throw that out, or if you don't want to offer draft picks, maybe a prospect. I don't think the asking price is going to be all that expensive, since the Blue Jackets are in rebuild mode and they're trying to break out of that funk. I think you can definitely get Patrik Laine on the down low, and I don't even think you have to offer up a roster player. Would the Blue Jackets demand for Alexander Holtz? Maybe, just because he is young, still on his entry-level contract, and maybe the Devils can see better scoring production or just overall better handling of the puck from someone like Patrik Laine as opposed to Alexander Holtz, which I think is safe for me to say. But I don't even think you need to offer Alexander Holtz in that sort of aspect. But if the Blue Jackets do want a roster player, I guess the only player that would be made available in that sort of trade circumstance is Alexander Holtz. I don't see Tom Fitzgerald really breaking the bank for Patrik Laine. He's not really necessarily a need. He leans more towards of that want aspect, as I've been saying all offseason. What's the difference between a need and a want? I still think the Devils should try to find someone who's a little more physical, someone who's more efficient in the faceoff department, because scoring was sometimes a problem outside of the top six, but it wasn't dire. It wasn't like that bad. But sometimes you did see it in stretches of games in which the Devils were struggling to get some offensive production. I think he'd be a decent winger. And if you get him cheap, why not? And if the salary is retained by the Blue Jackets by at least 50%, I guess that's okay. But I'm leaning towards more no than yes. And who knows? Maybe my opinion will change within the next few weeks. But for the time being, he's an option, but I don't think he should be a top option, if that makes sense. Let me know what you guys think. Are you willing for the Devils to trade for Patrik Laine? What do you think he could contribute to the roster? Did I miss anything? And what are your thoughts on Steve Kouleas' ideas of players that the Devils could give up for Jacob Markstrom? Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.